You're listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis. I got an awesome show for you today. It's on EB-5 immigration, and it's a very niche area of the law where you actually bring investors into the country who create jobs, and we all love that. We come here every single week to give you legal information. But if you need your first step, the first step towards your solution, listen to it and get it right here on Lewis on the Law.
Welcome to Lewis on the Law.
You are listening to Lewis on the Law. Sasan, powerful beyond measure. That's really the theme of this show. This show is all about empowerment. My name is James Lewis. I will be your host for the next hour here on Lewis on the Law. We come here every single week to give you legal information. The information on this show is not designed to replace the advice of an actual attorney. If you have a legal problem, go ahead and contract with an attorney. I've got an awesome show for you today, another cutting-edge show on a very interesting part of the law. It's part of the investment immigration job-based program called EB-5. Is that correct, Sasan?
That's correct, James. Well, first of all, hello to your listeners, and thank you for having me on your show. You have a great show with great introduction music, so I got to give you that.
Great. I created that introduction music myself. So Sasan is an attorney attorney and mediator at the Nemat Law Firm. Is that how you pronounce that?
So it's Sasan Nemat. It's a Persian name. So my practice is land use and real estate. There's a specialty of immigration that I also practice, the EB-5 investment immigration-based platform.
Yeah, and we actually cross a little paths because both of us are basically land attorneys, though you have a little bit more of a specialized practice than I do. I'm just like, give me your leases, I'll write them, negotiate them, or whatever, you know. That keeps me in business, believe it or not.
Hey, I don't blame you. I do the same. So.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So why don't you explain a little bit about what EB-5 is?
Sure. So EB-5, it's actually not a new law, but it is a part of a law that's just sort of come out to the surface recently. It's part of the Immigration Nationality Act, INA 203B5, which was went into law in 1990.
Okay, so this is part of the Immigration and Naturalization Services Act? Correct. Is that where this is coming from?
Correct, Immigration Nationality Act. And in 1990, pretty much this part of the law was based after the model in Canada. So Canada was trying to attract...
Wait a minute, we're modeling stuff after the Canadians? We can't come up with stuff on our own?
Hey, I'm sorry to break it to you. It seems to be the case in this one, right? But hey, good things can come from other places, right? So,
well, I don't know. Canada, that sounds as bad as Philadelphia or something like that.
It could be, right? I guess to each their own, right? So, but the law was made a model after that, and it's pretty much what the law wants to attract is capital to the United States in exchange for immigration, and the caveat to that is 10 jobs minimum for each investment slot is created. So it helps revitalize some parts of the economy that otherwise would not get attractive capital. And at the same time, it helps the sort of interest that lies outside the boundaries of the United States for folks that want to come to the United States to be able to do that through this mechanism.
Okay, so wait a minute. So if you want to come to the United States and you're rich, and you've got enough money to create 10 jobs through your investment, that's the opening or platform for this, right?
Correct. So it's a very specialty sort of avenue for immigration to the United States. You have to have a serious amount of net worth, and
like what kind of net worth are you talking? I mean, I've got some investments that I want the capital for.
So I like that. Let's get down to business, right? How much do you really need to be listening to this a little more carefully, right? So it's $500,000 at the minimum if you are investing in areas that are known as T's, and that's not, to have a T, but that's for economically challenged sort of areas or less populated areas or places that are showing pretty much 150% over what the economic unemployment rate is.
Okay, so that's really interesting. So the focuses of this is to actually revitalize underdeveloped areas or economically depressed areas?
Exactly. So it's a tool that has been around for 30-some years, 40 years. But since the recession of 2008, it actually showed the value that it has. And that's why it's now, you can hear about it a little bit more, but that's pretty much the goal of it, is to attract capital to places that otherwise conventional lending would never try to go there.
Okay, that is really helpful to know. So, is that the advantage of EB-5?
So EB-5, there other employment-based immigration platforms out there. Starts from EB1, it goes EB2, EB3, EB4, EB5. EB1 and EB2 are pretty much the sort of mechanisms that if you have a specialty education, if you have extraordinary ability, let's say if you're a basketball player in some other place and you're a champion of basketball, and that's the way you want to come to the United States. So with that specialty knowledge and understanding that you have, that's the mechanism to come to the United States. If you're a skilled worker, that's EB3. If you're working with governmental entities and religious workers, that's EB4. EB5 is the platform that pretty much what you need to have is the capital. And
now I'm surprised that more people don't know about this. I mean, as soon as I heard you tell me about this area of law that you work in, I was like, wait a minute. There's property all around that I need people to invest in,
So as far as the recognition goes, you're right. It's something that perhaps not every person is aware of it, and it's just sort of a specialty practice. My background as a first-generation immigrant, my background in the land use environment, both as the business principal in various opportunities that I've touched my hand on, as well as real estate attorney, has given me knowledge that capital is very important. It's the bottleneck of everything.
Capital is very important. That's the understatement of the day, guys.
to put it lightly, right? But at the end of the day, if you don't have the right amount of capital, the right sort of security of capital, there are a lot of projects that will go unfinished. So that's, where EB5 comes to the picture. And when you look at just how overseas markets are and how there's a great appetite for buying real estate in the United States, understand that real estate is a scarce commodity. At the end of the day, there's a finite amount of it left. And there is a good deal of appetite overseas for owning real estate in the United States. And there's a good appetite overseas for also becoming U.S. citizens. So it's sort of marriage of the two, marrying land use with immigration. So as a first-generation immigrant, I feel like I'm well-versed and well-placed to be the bridge of that. And that's how I've sort of been a little more curious than the average person on EB5.
Now, do you actually get your investors overseas? Like, do you actually approach people overseas? I know you go overseas a lot. So do you actually approach people overseas with this investment opportunity?
So that's funny you say that. So no, I don't approach folks for investment purposes. And that's, one piece of legal information I would give folks today is you need to talk to a security lawyer before you approach folks. You need to understand who you can approach and who you can't. But I do go overseas to make educational seminars. I did one in Singapore. It was actually, I was a part of a crew from Georgia State College of Law, the Urban Fellowship Program, the Center for Study of Metropolitan Growth. And we did a little bit of, I did a little bit of presentation on EB5 and with a broader scheme of what urban law and the sort of international perspective on urban law. But most of my traveling, to be honest with you, James, are backpacking, which, I just take a backpack, go from one place to another. I just did, after Singapore, we did Bali, Indonesia, Singapore, and then Thailand. So that's why I travel, and I recommend everybody to do that.
Okay, so you don't actually look for investors. I have a one-focus mind here. I would, if I had this in my tool bag, I would be throwing it out to every single person I saw drive a Maserati. I'm just like, you want to invest in the United States? I got a deal for you.
Well, I tell you that. If you're listening to this show and you would like to call Nemat Law Firm a call, I wouldn't deny that call.
That sounds perfect. Okay, so kind of give me a timeline and a sequence of events on EB5.
Sure.
Like the 1,000-foot view, if you would.
So let's start from day one. Like we said, not everybody is qualified for this sort of plan and scheme to come to the United States. You got to be of a certain high net worth. So a security attorney would determine who's the right person to be messing around with something like this. Because at the end of the day, investments are very risky and cycles change. And there's a lot, especially when you're looking at from one country to another, there's a lot that is involved there. So that's step one. Step two is there's need to be a lot of filings. There's need to be a lot of petitions that are put in place, business plans that are written. So that's as far as step two. Then step three is going to the consulate. Whether you're here and go for adjustment of status or you're overseas and go in to a consulate, you're looking to get conditional green card at that point in time. So what happens is after conditional green card, Then there's the job-based program comes into place. There's mechanisms and need for making sure these jobs are created. So it goes on and on. So there's a little bit of one hand is creating jobs and economy here domestically. The other hand is immigration and the work actually that you need to do with USCIS to make that happen. And at some point towards the end, these conditions are removed through the right petitions.
Okay, we're getting towards the end of this segment, so why don't you give them some contact information for you, Sasan?
Sure. If you're listening to the show and you want to reach me, you can reach me at 770-285-8008, Nemat Law Firm, and that is nematlawfirm.com, and this is Attorney Nemat of, again, Nemat Law Firm.
You're listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis. I'm your host this week and every week. We have a really interesting topic here, a really kind of niche area of the law. If you have a topic you'd like to hear on air, go ahead and hit me on my website, jameslewislegal.com. You can just drop me a line. If I like your topic, I might bring an attorney who actually knows something about your topic on air, and we may actually talk about it. I reserve that right there. We'll be back in a minute. I kind of feel like we're at a disco here. Just a little bit. And it's got a little bit of a disco vibe to it. You're listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis. I am here in the studio with attorney Sasan Nemat of the Nemat Law Firm. Sasan, why don't you give them some contact information for you?
Sure. If you want to reach me, you can reach me at 770-285-8008. This is Sasan Nemat of Nemat Law Firm, attorney at law and mediator. You can also reach out to my website, www.nematlawfirm.com.
And my name is James Lewis. I'm your host for the next 45 minutes. I think we've already gone through 15. I usually say an hour, but that's not the truth. We've got a great show for you guys today. It is on EB5, and it's a specialized area of the immigration law and kind of like in a land use. It kind of transcends into the land use area. If you want to get in touch with me, my number is 404-610-0075. You can email me at james@jameslewislegal.com. All my shows are archived on my website, so it'll eventually be like a treasury trove of legal issues. Any single legal issue you could possibly think of, you'll go to my website, you can find it. If you have a legal issue you want to hear spoken about on this show, go ahead and drop me a line on my contact page. And if I like your topic, I might actually bring an attorney on who knows something about your topic, and we may actually talk about it. But like I said, that all depends if I like you. No, it has nothing to do with that. It's all about the topic and the information here. Okay, let's get into this a little bit deeper here because, Sasan, I got a lot of finance and economists and guys like that come on this show. I don't know if you've been checking it out, but I got a couple of securities lawyers, a couple of tax lawyers in my back pocket here. So let's get into a technical overview on this.
Sure. So let's start by saying how effective EB5 has been. There was a study by, I believe it was the Homeland Security Ombudsman that said 82% of counties throughout the United States have had some touch of EB5. So that helps you, have a sort of perspective of how broad and how applicable this can be in the county.
Wait,
that
did you say 85% of the counties in the United States?
Correct, 82%.
Wow, that's a large number.
Correct. And that was, the study was done a couple of years ago. So I believe, this number might be even higher if there was a study done today. But that shows you how effective it is. But the mechanism and the way you can do it is very complex. First, you need a very strong business plan. You need to show what's this business doing. All the, I'm sure your finance guys and, the smarter people like that you mentioned, they've told you, the sort of things that needs to be on a business plan. But the strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, all of, what really this business is going to deal with needs to be there. It's what makes this a little different than your normal business plan is that this is a projection and a promise. So you are pretty much setting the stage for what this is going to be with the USCIS.
Wait a minute. What do you mean by projection and a promise?
So pretty much what you're saying is this target area has this sort of immigration or employment, and this is how your project is going to change some of that. You're making certain assertions about the business that you're doing. So this has to be very detailed because there's going to be oversight on this. There's going to be due diligence on this from the government standpoint, the United States government standpoint, to make sure that If there's a promise of this number of jobs within the period that it was promised to be done, it is actually done. If there was a promise to be made as far as certain capitalizations, they were done as it was planned. So this is one of those areas in which there's definitely investment of money and resources needed to have one of those smart folks, just that you mentioned, writing this. So when that's written out with the I-526 petition, is given to...
Wait a minute, so you've used a fancy number there. What's an I-526 petition?
So what the U.S. Immigration Services does is gives numbers in alphabets to different forms. So that's just, the form that for this purpose you need to use is just the form that it is. So I-526 pretty much sets the stage that this applicant petitioner wants to get conditional green card. Then that's the part that there's going to be a little bit of waiting game on the immigration side. Most times you need to put the money in escrow. It depends on some countries' regulations. Let's say South Korea doesn't let you put the money in escrow. Okay,
so when you're talking about putting money in escrow, so there's a certain amount up front that has to be basically put up to even establish your status with this EB-5 regulation.
Correct, and that's the amount that is required to invest. So the capital for these folks is tied up right at the front gate. So you're looking at a substantial amount of capital that is put in escrow at that point in time. And this capital, the way it's classified with the USCIS, is that it has to be legitimate capital, obviously, right? So you can't be a mobster or this and that and just try to use this process as a sort of a money laundering mechanism. So one needs to be...
Well, that's good to know.
And unfortunately, that happens, and that's one of the reasons now this program is on, these sort of extensions, because there's been a little bit of abuse both on the sides of shady folks outside of the United States and unfortunately folks here misusing the trust of folks overseas. So there's the proceeds and how it comes is also important to be established in that business plan.
Okay. Can I ask you a question? Like,
Sure.
Who holds? Okay, so you said the money has to be held in escrow. Who holds that money in escrow?
Okay, so that goes to...
I mean, is it escrow holding companies?
Correct. So these are third parties that will hold these funds, but it goes down to also the different complexities that we will get and address. Meaning, if it is a direct investment, is it going into a regional center, as well as is it making a debt to, as far as lending a debt to a company or owning equity on the company. So these are all different parameters that influence that. But yes, it goes to sum it, to sort of simplify it, it goes to a third party escrow.
Okay. So, because I do a lot of escrow holding, so that might be really, that's a good gig. You get 2% of every single dollar that goes through your escrow account.
That could add up to a substantial amount.
It can add up to, you're right. I'm getting, just talking to you, I'm getting dollar signs in my head. I'm just like, wow, like, how can I get involved in this?
If I may, so that was just the beginning of the process.
Okay.
So then you go in so let's say the folks move to the United States at that point in time. With EB-5, one of the advantages they has is that you can get the entire family involved. So that's, it's the petitioner and spouse and the kids under 21 are included. So at that point in time, there's a conditional, like we said, there's a condition on this residency, and that is creating of those jobs. So for the conditions to be removed, then you need to follow certain other processes. One, and the most important part, is to make sure this capital was at risk, tied up, and actually creating those jobs. So that's
now that sounds like a great thing for the American economy. I mean, bring in foreign investors, make sure they have a lot of cash, and then create jobs in underprivileged areas or underdeveloped areas. I mean, that sounds like a win-win for the U.S., especially since the investors have to have their money up front.
Sure, and it truly is, and that's why in 2008 there's been a sort of surge of interest in this body of law and taking advantage of this body of law. And for the listeners out there, this is not some sort of humanitarian program. It's
about making money.
Correct. This is about bring your capital. Mostly folks that do have that capital overseas, they're also folks who are sophisticated, or business owners, or educated folks. So this is also, great quality of family and brains that come out here with substantial amount of capital that at the minimum needs to create 10 jobs, full-time jobs, with each block of investment. So you're looking at serious stimulation of certain economies.
Yeah, especially in poorer areas. So are we into the deal structuring here? So how do you structure the deal to get these people over here?
Sure. We can jump on deal structuring, and perhaps in between we're going to cover some of the other processes because,
okay, wait a minute. We hadn't finished. There's even more processes to go through. This is a very detailed thing here.
It is. This process is very complex. It involves immigration attorneys, involves investment managers, involves syndication attorneys, you name it. So it's a very complex process, and unfortunately, it's a little difficult to sum it up all at once, in this sort of simplifying sort of manner. But to answer your question about deal structuring with these assets can happen in two ways. One is equity-based, one is based on debt. So the equity-based is simply the investor becomes owner of, certain
part of the equity of a company.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the debt base is based on the investor acts like a bank as a lender and gets all these rights that a typical lender would have in such a deal. So it can.
So what kind of interest rates on the debt-based structure? What kind of interest rates are you talking about?
Okay, that's a great question. With interest rates, what you need to consider is these folks aren't typically coming out to get the highest interest to begin with. This is more of let's put the money in a safer environment, and be sure to get the money back at some point. And there's no guarantees with this program, so knowing if corporation is allowed to give any sort of guarantees. But at the end of the day, that's how these are structured. But interest rates aren't really significant in these sort of deals.
Okay, we're going to get back into some of the technical aspects of this. Sasan, we're reaching the end of the segment. Why don't you give them some more contact information for you?
Sure. You can reach me at nematlawfirm.com. That's NEMAT lawfirm.com. You can also reach me by phone, 770-285-8008. And this is Sasan Nemat.
You're listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis. I've got a really fascinating show for you guys today. It's on EB-5 immigration law. If you have a topic that you'd like to hear on air, go ahead and hit me up at jameslewislegal.com. You can go ahead and email me at james@jameslewislegal.com, or you can give me a call at 404-610-0075. And if I like your topic, I may talk about it on air, and I may bring an attorney who knows something about your topic. If you need the help of an attorney, don't take just the advice of this show. If you have a serious legal issue, you need to contract with an actual attorney. If you need an attorney, you can contact me. I know a lot of attorneys. If I can't help you with your legal issue, I can put you in the right direction. We've got a lot more stuff coming up. We're going to talk about more about deal structuring and the technical overview when we get back. That's what I get for picking music unheard. Joey, our wonderful producer over here, emailed me yesterday. He's like, do you have some music for the show? And I'm just like, I don't know. Looked up music about land because we're talking about land. I should have done money stuff because that's always better, Sounds greedy and it's more upbeat. But there you go. That's what I get for picking music off of the internet without even listening to it first. What in the world am I thinking? You're listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis. I got an awesome show for you today. It's called, it's on EB-5 immigration, and it's a very niche area of the law where you actually bring investors into the country who create jobs, and we all love that. I have attorney Sasan Nemat on with me, the Nemat Law Firm, and I'm probably not pronouncing that right. I would do a terrible job of that. Sasan, give them some contact information for you once again.
Sure. It's the Nemat Law Firm. My name is Sasan Nemat, and where you can get in touch with me is 770-285-8008 and nematlawfirm.com. That's NEMAT lawfirm.com.
And we have a lot of stuff we're going to get into here. Each week, Lewis on the Law comes on and we bring you legal information. We don't actually supply legal advice. This information is just designed to be a first step in your legal process. If you want to find out more about EB-5 immigration or forming a corporation or your taxes. I've had attorneys come in and talk about all of that stuff. You need to actually contract with an attorney. If you have a serious issue, you definitely want to. Don't take the advice or the words you hear on this show as your method to combat the system. You're not an expert on the law. You need to go ahead and actually contract with an actual licensed attorney. You can contact me. I may be able to help you with your issue. If not, I can direct you to an attorney that can help you with your issue. Sasan, we're talking about the deal. I always love this, making the deal. That's it's not actually getting to the deal. It's actually when you make the deal that's the successful part of it.
Correct. And so we are at the deal-making stage of it.
Yeah,
and like
deal
you said,
structuring.
The deal structuring is a beast, right? Because we don't know exactly what works for everybody, right? Everybody has a different taste, has a different appetite for risk, what they want to accomplish. Some people may prefer to be a part of a deal, then other folks may prefer to have a security of certain smaller return. So this is a very a part that you definitely want to have thorough conversation with your representative and the folks who are representing you in these deals and giving you advice. But going back to equity-based and as well as debt-based conversation that we're having. So on debt-based, it's important for the folks that invest these monies to know if the money that they're lending is subordinated or unsubordinated to other loans that exist. Let's say if there's money that's invested in a hotel chain, in senior housing, is the construction loan going to be a more advantageous situation and seating than this loan, or would it be otherwise? So, the risks like this are the details that wants to be discussed at that point in time. Equity-based, you want to sort of understand what's written in these partnership agreements, what's written in these operating agreements, what sort of rights do majority owners have compared to minority owners of these companies? What's the exit strategy, right? We're talking about the deal, but there's at some point there needs to be an exit. So those sort of conversations are serious ones to be had.
Wait a minute. So when you're talking about equity-based lending, then and you want to be first in line, why doesn't everybody just lend towards the purchase of the land? Because purchase money is almost always the first lien on property.
Correct, and that's these deals are structured in various sort of ways. The bottleneck with the structuring of these deals is jobs. So, and that's why sometimes these sort of potential land purchase just on its own is not going to create 10 jobs which are direct and or indirect. So that's the sort of coming down to it is how is it going to be structured to show jobs are created. It can leverage other monies if you're using a regional center, but again, that adds to a little bit of a complexity to it.
Okay, now you said something about regional centers. So there are regional centers for this? I mean, is there like a big place where you go where there's EB5 investors and people who know about EB5 investing? Is there a regional center? Correct.
So that's a great question. So regional center, I guess not in how the word, together sound, these two words, but as in the sense that investors can either directly choose a new entity or even a failing business to invest in, as long as that saves jobs and creates jobs. So a troubled business can still go out, for the folks who are right now turn down SBA loans, that sort of thing. You can still go out there and look for funds. It may be a little bit more unconventional, but for the folks that are doing it directly, that's a different paradigm. I guess they would get to know the folks, whatever it is, it's a hotel class, whatever it is. Personally, get to know them, and then directly invest in this business. With other folks, you can pile up your cash, your money, with other folks all around the world, even domestic capital, into what's known as a regional center. And these regional centers then have investment managers, all these other folks, that would take care of a lot of different parts of it. There's no guarantees again. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of different issues that have come with regional centers, but these regional centers at first, when the law was written, were sort of a temporary sort of measure, and then in 2005, they became permanent. And now they've funneled more of the bulk of these sort of projects than directly for investors to invest in projects themselves. So regional centers are where the bulk of capital is going, and pretty much what happens is the direct and indirect jobs are calculated, and the regional center most times leverages the money that they get from foreign investors with other lending inside here. So what that means is most times the foreign money is used as mezzanine financing for a lot of these commercial.
Okay, so wait a minute. What is mezzanine financing? Because when I think of mezzanine, I think of a high school gym. I don't know about you, Joey. I mean mezzanine.
So besides the high school gym, it could, in the construction setting, it could also have a meaning of the difference between sort of the capital at the front, right? Whatever deal you sit on, there's some money that you need to pay, then there's some money that your construction loan officer is going to originate from the bank. So that money still is money that needs to come out of your pocket or someone else's pocket, right? If you're building a hotel, building a senior housing, that sort of thing. So at that point in time, a lot of these regional centers are using EB5 and investors funds for satisfying the mezzanine financing pieces of it. So that means that percentage that needs to come out in cash comes out from foreign investors. Then that's leverage to get construction loan from
So
elsewhere.
It's a tiered type of funding where a certain amount of funds are used for one thing and to leverage the access to other funds.
Correct. And that's why there's a lot of complexity with these scenarios, because you need to understand how your money sits different from other folks within the same interest. So unfortunately, sometimes the construction lender might have different priorities than the investors from foreign EB5. So these are details that needs to be conversations these folks need to be having.
Okay, so let's. Do you have a case study here that we can talk about? I mean, can we like break this down through some kind of example here?
Sure. So as far as the regional center and just showing how effective it is, there's a study on what's known as South Dakota International Business Institute's dairy economic EB5. And, EB5 names can be very creative, right? So, but what in essence in 2005 case study of DHS shows from Department of Homeland Security is that 240 jobs directly were created, 638 indirect jobs were created, and over 360 million funds were brought in additionally to the region as a result of this EB5. And what happened was...
Wait a minute, now what region was that again?
So this was in South Dakota.
Okay.
60 immigrant investors, total of 30 million. So this was economically deprived area, $500,000 each investor, 60 of them, $30 million total. That was leveraged to get additional funding. And altogether, it created 240 jobs, that was direct, 368 indirect jobs, and $360 million that was funneled to the area as a result of this EB5. So EB5 can be very lucrative, very good for stimulating local economies, especially in places like rural markets.
South Dakota is extremely interesting because just last week, South Dakota was involved in the Wayfair decision. And they seem to be very progressive economically. They're making moves. So South Dakota, are they going to become a big financial center one of these days?
Hey, who knows? Growing? Who knows? But it seems to me that at least this regional center did well. We will get to other issues with some of these regional centers. There are a lot of challenges, but again, all these investors need to proceed with caution and know what exactly they're doing, because there's no sort of playbook to play by.
That on that note, we'll get back to that because I think that's a hot topic right there. You're listening to Lewis on the Law. My name is James Lewis. I am here on air with attorney Sasan Nemat. Sasan, will you give them some contact information once again for you?
Sure. If you want to reach me, please reach me at 770-285-8008. Again, that is 770-285-8008. Or you can reach me at nematlawfirm.com. And that is spelled as NEMAT lawfirm.com.
You're listening to Lewis on the Law. I am here each week to bring you legal information. This is not designed to replace the advice of a licensed attorney. If you have a serious legal issue, go ahead and contact a licensed attorney. You can contact me. Believe it or not, I am a licensed attorney. That may be hard for some of you guys out there to believe, but I am. And if I can't help you with your legal issue, I can direct you towards an attorney who can help you with your legal issue. When we get back, we're going to talk about some challenges and downfalls with this. And so... that's really exciting. I can't wait to hear about the downfalls. You're listening to Lewis on the Law. I feel like we're at the club. That's right. We're at the disco. Like I don't go to the disco. I don't dance. I got no moves, Joey. Nothing going on here whatsoever.
Let me see the moves, James.
Yeah, it goes about like that, and that's about as much. You guys don't want to see a chubby middle-aged guy do any dance moves. Trust me, that's not what anybody wants to see. Nobody wants to pay money for, but you might pay a little cash for a chubby middle-aged guy talking about investment law. So that is where we're at. Now, we've got a great topic going today. We have a very obscure area of the immigration law, EB-5, that we're talking about, and its investment potential. Now, we've been talking about a lot of the structural aspects of it, but let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges and downfalls.
Sure. So on one end of the spectrum is a happy immigrant, high net worth individual who's invested a significant amount of resources into U.S. economy, revitalized areas that a lot of us call home, and the folks move, everything works out, they get their money back. That's one part. Unfortunately, on the other end of the spectrum, we've seen a whole bunch of different situations where things have worked out terrible. And we're talking about Ponzi schemes, which happen quite often. Unfortunately, with the scheme that I just told you of how complex this process is and just the timelines that it takes, if someone is really trying to hurt you, by the time you realize that that's going on, it's going to take a while.
So are these foreign investors that are basically being taken for cash?
There we go, yes. And unfortunately, folks of high reputation, sometimes involvement with different places where you don't think that will happen, unfortunately have done that in the past. So that's one challenge to it. So due diligence matters a lot. These folks need to do a great number of due diligence to make sure that the folks they're working with are trustworthy and the money is safe into projects that are really booming certain local economies and not just going to yachts and boats and that sort of thing.
Drat. Joey, I've been looking for that 1977 Mercedes convertible. I'm thinking, can I get an investor here and some of it go to my 1977? Nah, I have a bar license I'm trying to protect. I would never do anything like that. Maybe.
No, unfortunately, though, for a lot of the investors, they learn it the hard way. And those things do happen. And unfortunately, with EB-5, it does happen quite often that things go wrong. The other part is when you deal with land use, as you and I deal with, you see projects that take longer than they were supposed to take. You see projects that finish with more capital than they originally anticipated. So things of that nature also happens a lot with construction and operation, especially when you're talking about commercial real estate. So that's also part of the uncertainty. You might deal with the right people, not really doing the right jobs. So what happens is you get stuck, your capital gets stuck. USCIS is not happy that this place that was supposed to be booming and bringing business and this and that now it says an eyesore, right? So, and that has happened. Unfortunately, there was, I'm not exactly sure, but there was this other case in Florida that this person building hotels did the same. So now, it's an eyesore to the community. These monies are lost. And it's just at that point in time, it's a total loss.
That's definitely the definition of a downfall. So what are the other important considerations do we need to take into account here?
Sure. So the capital at risk requirement, that's something that folks need to be know about, be concerned about, at the same time play it by how the law wants it to be played by. Meaning you can't put your capital or just a portion of the capital in this business and really not bring it to risk and bring it to the sort of current of the economy. So what you need to do is make sure that capital that you're investing in commercial real estate or anywhere else in the United States is engaged in the economy. So that's one requirement, because if you don't do that, then a couple of years later, when the due diligence and conditions are to be removed, then you find out the hard way that, you were supposed to do that. So that's one important conversation to be had at that point in time. The other is, again, we touched on it, these resources have to be from bona fide personal resources. So folks need to be able to show where this $500,000, $1 million came from. It just can't be just, it just, fell on my lap. But it has to be something of record that shows this money was from a sale of real estate, this money was from a sale of business, instruments, whatever it might be.
Now, wait a minute. Who does that type of regulatory work? You said it has to be shown. Who's doing this type of regulation and regulatory work to actually, audit that?
Sure, that's a great question. At this point in time, it's all USCIS. So it's the State Department pretty much that is doing that, is granting visas.
Well, that sounds like a terrible person to be auditing someone's books, actually. No.
Well, I'm not going to comment on that, James. But what I would tell you is it's complex, right? Can the system be a little bit more efficient in terms of the folks who are auditing this? Perhaps can be, but it's complex. There's, especially with foreign assets buying up local real estate, that can also have a downfall into it in the sense that certain places, pieces of history, pieces of infrastructure that you don't want to be foreign owned may happen to be that sort of way. So this is a very complex piece of law, a complex piece of influx and outflux of capital from one country to another. And for now, it seems to me that the USCIS State Department is perhaps well positioned, or at least better positioned than other factors.
That sounds like the words of a company man right there.
Well, I have a company and a small law firm to run. So.
Nice.
But coming back to the process itself, if you don't mind.
Okay.
We start with, again, these are investments that are made at the same time that law filings happens, waiting time for immigration, waiting time for construction, and then removal of conditions when those conditions are met, other filings, and then, a couple years later, you have a family who's created jobs and now can call themselves legal permanent residents.
Okay, so what is the timeline for this? So the timeline, you kind of touched on it. It's a couple of years, basically, process?
Correct. So this is, in theory, it can last from 2.5 years in 3 years. And that's what couple of months for processings, couple of years for conditional permanent residency, and then for it to be done. However, in practice, with the influx of capital now from certain countries, the process actually has certain deadlines for certain nationals. Let's say if you're from China, then might take you a little bit more amount of time to become AB5 permanent resident. So it's just at this point in time, the timing of it really depends on how soon the USCIS goes over to.
So there are favored countries for this to take place with.
There's no favored countries. It's just that certain countries may have more petitioners, more applicants. So there's a cap, and that cap may be satisfied at some point during the year before we get to the end of the year. So, and then, if there are not that many other applicants from other countries, then it's sort of balanced out at the end of the day. But it's 10,000 visas per year that USCIS designates for this purpose. Just to give it, put in perspective, and up until 2009, less than 1,000 of these had been issued. So you're talking about, not that many families in total, 1,000 or less per year. 2014, the number was much higher.
So is it that people are just not qualifying, or is it that people just are not applying for it?
So that's a great question. A little bit of both. So a little bit of denials of applications, and a little bit of just, the folks who are within this category of investment may choose to go to other countries, may not really want to go through this process. So it's a little bit of a mix of what the reason might be.
Okay, so that's really great. So does this law act as an umbrella, basically? It not only brings in the investor himself, but you mentioned his family too?
Correct. So spouse and children under 21. But at the end of the day, I think what I want to really highlight is, I know you've worked with that Atlanta Beltline, big infrastructure. You are in the midst of land use. You know how things are with land use. Capital is the key. This piece of law has really funded a lot of revitalization of economies around the U.S. It can be a great tool for, personally, what I think is affordable housing, especially if it can tie up foreign capital with creation of affordable housing, maybe even start from the Atlanta Beltline. But I think it can be a great tool for bettering the economy as a whole.
Now that's an interesting topic because this is interesting. Both Sasan and I used to work for the Atlanta Beltline at different times. I worked there for a while, and then you worked there after me.
Correct. And I had the pleasure of being a part of that project and seeing it from the inside as you did. And it's great. A lot of great stuff happening in Atlanta. And if I may, just to wrap up the sort of EB5 conversation that we're having, because this is a part of the broader immigration conversation, what I would like to say is echo what the American Immigration Lawyers Association, ILA, has stated, to make sure that fair process exists for immigration throughout, independent judiciary from USCIS, and so that foreign nationals, if they want to invest $1 million of their hard-earned cash in the United States, feel comfortable that they're investing such money in a country that protects them. So I hope that, when you look at it from the outside, we see a picture that immigrants are treated with respect and immigrants have fair access to justice. At
least immigrants with $1 million cash.
Or immigrants that are, a few years old and may have to represent themselves in court.
Okay, we're reaching the end here. I hate to cut you off. I know you're on a roll, but go ahead and give them some contact information for you real quickly.
Again, thanks for having me on, James. You can reach me at 770-285-8008. This is Sasan Nemat, attorney at law and mediator, NematLawFirm.com.
You're listening to Lewis on the Law. We have a great show coming for you guys next week. We're going to talk about criminal justice reform with the City of Atlanta's Public Defender's Office. I have a couple of guests coming in, and we're going to talk about, you guessed it, marijuana legalization. Oh, am I allowed to say that on air? See you guys next week.